Ladies, gentlemen, fellow boys out there, welcome! We're here at the finale of Season 4, and that was pretty damn diabolical, if I do say so myself. Man, there's some things that I thought might happen, there's some things that I actually thought could happen, but didn't happen. So, honestly, we just need to dive right into this. Go ahead and leave me your thoughts on the finale down in the comments below, any theories you have going into next season, and everything like that. And of course, like this video if you do go on to enjoy it, and if you've enjoyed the coverage of the boys this season. And yeah, can't wait to get into next season, even though that's quite a while away. So, right at the beginning, I really did enjoy, I guess you could say, the intro. There's a little bit of a news report in how they're canceling the A-Train movie, and I think, you know, I'm pretty sure this is the case, that it's a bit of a piss take, as The Boys does, but this time, maybe kind of aimed at Warner Brothers, because since they've cancelled the A-Train movie, we have Ashley comment as the CEO, and despite the movie being completely finished, she says that we just realized we'd make more money from the write-off. Now, A-Train, I have to talk about that for a second because he wasn't in this episode at all. Now, some of you may say that was obvious, but not necessarily. I did have a prediction in how he might die this season, but he wasn't even in this final episode, which did still surprise me because I know he got out, but I thought we'd cut to a scene with him at some point. So I am wondering if he's coming back for the 5th and final season. But then I do think to myself, would he really do that if he's got out and he's out there in safety, so to speak? But I suppose it could bring back that whole situation of where he was talking to MM last episode in the penultimate episode saying, do you really think that Homelander wouldn't be going here or that it wouldn't go global? So I think if A-Train takes his own advice there with how he motivated MM to not run away last episode and just, you know, let the super domination commence, then surely A-Train will know that his family or nobody will ever be safe, including his family, if he just stays in the win. So let me know if you agree with me and you think A-Train could come back next season. Now, as for the boys and everything going on, we have Frenchie still cooking up the virus, but everyone is feeling the pressure because obviously they have the assassin on the loose and they don't know that it's actually Annie. And this is where, speaking of the assassin, we cut to the shapeshifter Starlight and things just get pretty damn awkward here. I know everyone's feeling sorry for Huey this season, but it gets kind of worse with her proposing to him, and then he planned to do that anyway. They spend some time together in bed once again, with a bit of chatter about not one finger, but two in the activities that they're doing, if you will. And this is when her skin starts to come off, so she needs a little bit of a top up. So she goes to see Annie. She does that. She also takes the piss out of Annie. And is it even a she? Because, I mean, the shapeshifter does comment that they barely remember what they looked like because they've been doing this for so long. But I did enjoy how this gave Erin Moriarty a chance to kind of act, you know, in a different kind of performance to that of her usual Starlight performance. So I imagine that was quite fun for her to do as she was really digging into Starlight and her insecurities. But we then visit Homelander in the episode and he's looking at his little jar of grays. Yep, absolutely wonderful there. But he also goes into Ryan's bag. He sees the picture of Butcher and Becca. He gets very angry in this moment because obviously this is a whole other insecurity with Homelander. If there's one shed of humanity he has and one kind of weakness that messes him up, on top of, I guess, you know, dying or like getting older and turning gray, it's Ryan. And I did say it in my last review, right at the end, that what if Homelander kills Ryan? And in this moment, I have to admit, I was thinking, oh damn, with how pissed off Homelander was when he was like, come here, get here now. And then Ryan walks away. I was like, oh my God, are we going to kind of get to that point or somewhere near that? But I also did say I wouldn't be surprised if, and only if, Ryan dies through Homelander's hands. That could happen in Season 5, and obviously Ryan didn't die this episode, and if anything, he could be going more to his father's side, but that could still be a thing that happens, because again, we know Butcher's committing himself to the very thing that he was refraining from doing, but Ryan, albeit, you know, he kind of walks off, and it seems like he's going more towards his father's direction. I do still think there's going to be a bit of flipping next season, and again, to stress this point, Ryan isn't so much of a thing in the comics, if you know about that. So I really do feel like he's completely on the board in terms of being taken out next season. But to add on to that theory one more time, with the obvious thing that Kessler wants, of course, I need to put on the table that it could be Butcher to be the one to actually kill Ryan. And that would obviously be very tragic. And this is where we get the first very big thing that happens in the episode. And that's when we have Homelander and Victoria Neuman go on Firecracker's Truth Bomb show. And Homelander reveals that Neuman is a soup. Much against her will, we can't forget how Homelander has gone off of Sage's plan, even though the thing is, Sage basically reveals later that she saw all of this coming, and this is a part of her plan. So Homelander not following the plan is kind of the plan here, because we can't forget that her main goal, really, is to cause an avalanche. There was the first pebble of the avalanche that we saw throughout the early episodes of this season, but more or less, even with her out the picture and Homelander thinking, okay, we're not going with her plan, the chaos has still been successful. And obviously, Neuman isn't on board with this. This isn't exactly what she thought was going to happen. She's been keeping that a very big secret, but Homelander reveals to her that she's going to do everything according to his desires when she is president, and she will be a puppet. So, as I said last episode, I felt like this was a very obvious thing that was coming, that I said I wouldn't be surprised if Neuman actually does, or if Huey did get through to Neuman last episode. So I guess, like, he didn't, but it kind of left the door ajar, and Homelander opened the door the whole way for her to kind of flip and go along with the boys this episode, and just ultimately want out. She wants out of the race, out of Singer and his men, and just, I guess, to run away with Samir and Zoe. This is where, honestly, speaking of Sage's plan, the avalanche is absolutely raining down hellfire, because all hell breaks loose here. Despite Neuman being outed as a soup, we have the Singer-Neuman election still being certified. There's protests erupting all over the country. New world, new rules. Homelander is getting to the point of what he was planning to do with Tech Knights, prisons, the camps and stuff. So this will involve arresting a lot of people who will be against his plan, and, not really arresting them as Neuman said, but killing them. So he gets a list of all of those who have dirt on them in Vought, informs Noir and the Deep that, okay, we're going to take out Robert Singer, and also, we're going to put every Vought hero to surround the Capitol, White House, and Pentagon, and basically, you're going to have to go and kill these people, of which, obviously, the Deep doesn't really have an issue with, and Noir certainly doesn't have an issue with, given how happy he was after killing the other Ashley, who wasn't even on the list. Throughout this episode, we also had Firecracker coughing a lot. It was in this moment in that meeting where she revealed that she's having heart palpitations and a fever because of the medication that she's taking. We have Homelander tell her to move down the table, and you just have that terrible, awkward look on her face, basically further reinforcing how she only has one use to him. And given that she just gets more sick throughout this episode, but then is, I guess, kind of okay by the end of it, the main point I'm getting to is that she doesn't die off this episode, so she's going into season 5, and it's making me wonder that even though I don't have a lot of faith in her flipping round to the other side and going against Homelander, I am wondering that, is she going to go out, like, loving Homelander still? So she's probably, and I think obviously, going to die next season, but will it kind of be a thing where she's still, like, holding his face, saying, I love you, in a bit of a Stormfront kind of way? Or will she actually get sick and tired of how belittling Homelander is to her? It would be pretty crazy, honestly, if next season Butcher manages to discreetly put the virus into her, and then you have her milk be absorbed by Homelander, and that's how he gets the virus. But anyway, this is when Ashley figures out that she's on the list after overhearing it, and she starts running for her life, which is just, she hasn't got much of an option left, so she injects herself with Compound V as an attempt, I guess, to give herself a chance at some kind of defense, and she falls down in agony, and her wig falls off, her head was rippling like her skull, bones were rippling, I guess in the way that Compound V does ripple, as we've seen down people's backs before, but she ends up looking like Gollum, and I was just like, damn. So what I found interesting is that we don't see what this episode. We don't see her for the rest of the episode. I feel like what they could do with Ashley going into season 5 is that she could be very useful with whatever kind of power she might get from this Compound V. Knowing the boys, they might have actually have given her a ridiculous yet hilarious crap power, and it's going to use her as a bit of a joke next season. Or one that could be useful and threatening to Vought, or both, if you know what I mean. I'm sure it would be hilarious, but how crazy would it be if Ashley actually could do some harm next season with her abilities? Now, back with the boys, this is where things ramp up for them very much so here, because Huey goes to find the files on Neuman, but there's no files thanks to the shapeshifter. So now all they've got is defense, so they go directly to Robert Singer and they inform the Secret Service of the situation. And in this moment, it's when the shapeshifter says to Huey that I'm warm, it's like a furnace in here, and he remembers her, or the shapeshifter, saying that when she was that woman in the shapeshifter's apartment. But this is when obviously the shapeshifter puts it together, because they can't help but act very awkward, and yeah, this is where things get nuts. I mean, when that Secret Service agent gets pushed or thrown into that cabinet, his back just bends. Very much so some boys action here with the assassin doing assassiny things. And this is where we have Starlight arrive. And I have to admit, in this moment, I was like, this seems so contrived. Like, how did she know where they were? I know she gave a reason for it, saying, oh yeah, find my friends on iPhone. But I have to say, in like a presidential bunker protection place like that, I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be a signal for ordinary phones like mine and yours. Like, obviously they would have communications through their own means, because they would communicate out of a place like that. But I'm pretty sure if we were down there, I would have no signal to ordinary phone networks. So I do have to admit, the way Starlight got there, I felt was a bit forced, but either way, I guess, had to be done so she could save the day, and she did. I was thinking in this moment, I don't know if it occurred to anyone else, is like, are they actually about to kill Annie? Because I thought when she choked out the assassin, that maybe she wasn't really down, and there's going to be this moment where she just punches through Annie and kills her, because I was expecting some kind of deaths this episode, and I know we got a death with Neuman and whatnot, but yeah, everyone for the most part on the boys' side was pretty safe. But let me know if you thought that was going to happen in that moment to Starlight. I also feel like, I don't know, Starlight is trained, I guess, but I don't know if she would be able to take on a trained assassin like that. She was like running over the walls, Matrix Neo style, and doing all this stuff. And I think Annie, again, she's trained, but I don't know if it was so believable that she could take out the assassin. Now, back at their HQ with Frenchie, he informs them that the virus is made. We have a bit of a chat between Starlight and Huey, which was pretty funny. Like, I can't blame Starlight at all. She's obviously a bit pissed off with what she's learned about Huey, even though he didn't know that it wasn't really her, but he was putting some clues together along the way. It still is very awkward, very messed up for Annie to deal with. And then Huey tells the boys about letting Neuman in and allowing her to flip and maybe helping out the situation, because ultimately they wanted to take Neuman out this whole season, but if she's not going to be president anymore, this is still a similar outcome. They don't really want to forgive her, but that's been quite a big theme this season amongst, not only this moment, but other characters, which reminds me, we get that moment with Kimiko and Frenchie talking about the Neuman situation and talking about forgiveness and how they need to kind of forgive themselves and how can they do that, but they're going to try each and every day. And we finally got that moment. Oh my God, guys, this made me way more emotional than what I was expecting. And she kissed him, and Frenchie kind of reacted like he did before when they first kissed, and it kind of seemed that Kimiko was getting embarrassed. I was like, no, not again. But then he reciprocates it and kisses her back, and I was just like, thank you. It was such a warming moment. It was so cute as well when Kimiko tells Starlight. I think this is just something most fans of the boys have just wanted to see, and it's really nice that we finally got there with these two, especially with what they're both grappling with. They're just like perfect for each other. But now we need to talk about when Ryan visits Butcher in hospital. So initially, they're talking about and easing him into like, okay, you can't go back to Homelander, Vought Tower. He's like, I kind of like it there. Well, parts of it. So they're further getting into how Ryan, deep down that like, this isn't right. Your father isn't right. Do you really want to be there? But this is when Grace, I guess with the pressure of everything in this episode, just like how Frenchie had pressure with the virus, and so this forced the boys to do other things. Well, there's the pressure that Mallory has now with the threat of Homelander because the country is ablaze, and this is just crazy. So she decides to basically reveal to him that the assassination attempt was on his father's orders, Flight 37. Homelander killed every soul on board, and that they have it on video. And not only that, he wasn't having an affair with her mother. Let's just say, without speaking too plainly here, he forced that situation on her, and that's how Ryan came to be. And so this is a lot of information for him to deal with, and we know that Ryan can get overwhelmed, but he initially was, I need to think. I need to leave. Let me think. But Grace just kept going and going, saying, you're the only one that can stop him. Basically saying, we can train you. He starts using his vision and notices that the walls are 6 foot deep in here. So he basically knows that they're trapping him in a cage unless he agrees to be their weapon. And as soon as he said, just like they did to my dad, I was like, no, surely you're not going to identify going more with your dad and going down that path when you've just learned what happened to your mum. Flight 37, Homelander's ordering an assassination. He's a kid who is getting overwhelmed and he needs time to think. But he's being given all of this. He's being told he can't leave. So he pushes Grace Mallory and she dies. And it kind of did feel like that moment, I guess in Star Wars when, your journey to the dark side is now complete. Now that he's killed Aunt Mallory, so to speak, I feel like the show is trying to convey to you that, okay, this is his Anakin Skywalker moment. Even though he knows this info about his dad now, he's kind of chosen a path. But I do want to go back to what I said earlier. Even though we have basically a firm path being committed to by Butcher with what he did at the end of the episode, this is the last we see of Ryan. So I know he walked away. I know he's killed Mallory. But in Season 5, I do think he still has the capability to help out. Because his path from here on out, as we're going to see in Season 5, is that all while I think in the first few episodes he's going to be with his dad, he's going to kind of still be like, oh, damn, well, I've killed Grace now. I guess I have to be here. And he's been tolerating it just like this whole season. And he's been going along with what his father wants, even though you see this wavering of conflict within him. I expect that same stuff to happen, but even more so. But there will be this moment in where ultimately, Homelander's Homelander. He's going to do that thing just like where he got the phone call last episode, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for Ryan again. There's going to be another thing like that where I think Ryan's going to be pushed over the edge, and he's going to do something. I don't know what it is, but I think that's going to lead to that moment in where, I don't know if Homelander will kill him, as we were theorizing about, or something else. Or it could go the other way, and he's just full on, his father's little sidekick, and Butcher's going to be forced to take him out. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't write Ryan off right now, despite what we saw in this moment. However, though, this is when Kessler appears, and it basically confirms to Butcher what he needs to do. Now, basically, end of the episode-ish now, we have Butcher arrive. He says, no deals, and all of his cancer tentacles come out, and he's basically like the Doc Ock of cancer, which is something I never thought I would say. And he takes out Zoe, who doesn't die, and it's really sad what happens to her. She basically ends up at the Red River group home, just like her mother grew up in, and he pulls Victoria Neuman apart. I've seen some people say on social media already that they think that this isn't the end of Neuman, but I think it is. She's gone. Yeah, very evidently gone. And I was a bit frustrated at Butcher because it's kind of like, why are you doing that? I know he subscribed to a plan, but at the end of the day, the plan was to take out Neuman because it would be a disaster if she was a super president. They didn't want that. Now, the thing is, since she's no longer going to be president and she wants out, she's no longer a threat in the same way that they saw her as. So it was a bit frustrating that Butcher was just like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. But I guess at this point, he's at the point of no return, even though I still think there's going to be some moments of the other good side of Billy coming through. But for now, he's, fully committed to Kessler's way of doing things. He takes the virus off Frenchie, and now I guess he's on his way to commit genocide. And this puts a massive rift between Billy and the boys, because it's now like, are the boys going to want to stop Billy? Because they obviously don't want, not every soup is bad. I mean, Annie's one of them, Kimiko's one of them. So next season, I think it'd be really sad, but maybe a necessary thing to do. If I wouldn't be surprised, again, shooting a theory out here, what if Huey is the one to take out Butcher right before, I don't know, the said moment happens in terms of whatever could happen with the virus rippling out to create a massive soup pandemic. I mean, we all know that Butcher's going to die as well as Homelander next season, but I wonder if there's going to be other people involved in that, like Huey, maybe not Homelander to be the one to kill Butcher, but actually Huey himself. This is where we have Neuman's death being reported on the news. It's pinned on Robert Singer because there's a recording of him getting out there. And we have Sage arrive to Homelander. She reveals kind of what we went over earlier. This was all a part of her plan. And, you know, Homelander's a bit struck, like, why did you do this? You know, I threw you out like trash. And she was just like, because I wanted to see if I could do it. Like, it's all a big, you know, mental exercise for her to test her brain capabilities. So she has survived to next season. So she's going to be, you know, this is really disastrous because there's such a, there's so much up against the boys. And there's such a formidable thing for them to deal with. Homelander in this new position now. We have the new president order freaking martial law, and he pledges full allegiance to Homelander, so he's a puppet. I mean, to the point of when Homelander basically kind of tells him to get off stage and interrupts his speech so he can do his new speech. There's so much for them to go up against. How are they gonna... It almost seems impossible, especially with them all being rounded up at the end of the episode by the new regime that has been put forward. I mean, as Homelander said in this moment, that there's going to be deputized superheroes nationwide who will report directly to Homelander himself. Whole entire armies of supes will be called upon to root the traitors out from the government and the streets. The boys themselves, for the most part. So we have Kimiko, Frenchie, Huey, who have been rounded up. MM got freaking dick slapped. Huey ended up in a car crash. Starlight got away, so that's going to be very helpful. She jetted off in a very badass way. So, I mean, she's not going to be able to help alone. But yeah, I feel like she's the only one outside of Butcher who's actually out in the wind. Because if you think about it, Kimiko's been restrained separately from Frenchie because she's a soup, so maybe they wanted to handle her separately, and they were taken out by Kate and Sam from Gen V. I imagine next episode, in Season 5, Episode 1, they'll show a scene of Annie trying to break Huey out of a camp, and I imagine the boys will regroup, like Frenchie, Kimiko. So I think it's going to be a bit of prison camp breaking from Starlight. And then they're going to try and, I don't know, win back the day against all odds in a secret HQ. Reminiscent to previous seasons, if you remember, when they were like underground and operating from there and couldn't really go out in public and stuff. I can easily imagine things like that happening. But still, they've got a tidal wave to go up against. And don't get me started on how Kimiko's voice came back when she was losing Frenchie, screaming no. That was heartbreaking. And as for the very ending, the president puppet being like, oh, I've only just learned about this, and you were the first person I wanted to tell. But Soldier Boy is still kicking around, and I know I briefly spoke about this earlier, but I'm wondering if we are going to see him get out again, and actually that being something that Homelander himself can't resist doing, because he might let his dad go, or at least, I don't know, turn down the halothane or whatever it is enough to wake him up so he can have a conversation with him, which would be a big mistake, but I can imagine... Again, Homelander is his own greatest enemy, and as Sage even teased, as you guys pointed out to me, that there's one person he will never be able to defeat, and that's himself. And this could be one of the dominoes on top of the other things he has going against him, potentially Ryan, Billy's freaking vial of virus, but also his dad that he might not be able to resist waking up, who could also maybe help out the boys once again in the final season. And that would be pretty hilarious if he wakes him up and then he escapes, and then I don't know if the boys would work with him again, especially that would cause all kinds of crazy stuff, especially for but I mean, they're going to need any ounce of help that they can get next season. So if you have any theories with regards to Soldier Boy, let me know down in the comments below as well. But that was the episode. I mean, I could ramble for a lot longer, but I've been rambling for long enough as it is. I feel like I've got all the theories out of me throughout the recap that I could. Without repeating myself so much from my last review, I still am pretty adamant that this season, not a bunch happened. I mean, obviously, a bunch has happened now by the finale, but it did feel like they were bridging the gap. A little, I wouldn't say it's filler or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, but it bridged the gap to the 5th and final season, and where I think they're going to go all gung-ho and not hold back whatsoever. I mean, after all, it's the 5th and final season, so I think next season's going to be way crazier than this one. So I guess I'm just going to leave the floor open to you guys. What did you think of the finale? Any theories that you have. What did you think of this season as a whole? I'll be chatting about it with you guys down in that comment section. But if you've made it to this part of the video and you've been watching my coverage of The Boys all season long, would really appreciate a like from you guys. Maybe consider subscribing for other videos on the channel, and obviously The Boys Season 5 when we eventually get that. But I'm going to love you and leave you now. So honestly, just thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow boys in the next video. Goodbye.